Another important thing to understand during the process of meiosis is a phenomenon called chiasmata. Chiasmata add additional guarantees for genetic diversity in the offspring that is inherent in sexual reproduction. And specifically, chiasmata refers to what is known as the crossing over of chromosomes to exchange genetic information. This is a valuable thing for plants in a natural setting in that it ensures that there will be greater diversity in the offspring. Let's take a little closer look at what I mean by that. In the last section, we were talking about how plants, animals for that matter as well, will have multiple copies of the same types of chromosomes. So if we're going with our regular old 2N plant that had 4 chromosomes, let's just take a look at chromosome number 1. Chromosome number 1, one came from let's say the mother plant and one came from the father plant. Well, what happens during meiosis is these are going to get chopped up, and so we're going to produce 4 gamete cells. And as it stands right now, each of these cells might possibly have versions of chromosome 1 that look something like this. These would be the 4 possible versions, and as you can see, really there's only 2 possible versions, because remember from mitosis that this arm is an exact copy of this arm. Well, this is what would happen if there were no chiasmata. And so if this were the case, then for all of the genes that are found on this chromosome number 1, flowering size, flowering color, or so on and so forth, there'll be hundreds and hundreds of genes on each chromosome. But basically, it would be like rolling a 2-sided die as far as the combinations of those various genes that we find on this chromosome. And so as you can see, that doesn't lend itself very much to diversity. Let's say there's only 2 possible combinations that these offspring could get from this one particular parent. With chiasmata, it dramatically increases the amount of different versions of chromosome number 1 that the offspring may receive from the same parent. And so let's look at, first of all, a photograph of actual chiasmata. And here we are. In reality, what we're seeing is multiple chiasmata. Each one of these points of crossover is what we would call a chiasmata. I think what you can probably picture here is, and I'm going to trace over this. You know, we've got one chromosome here that's red, and this one is doing this number, and this second chromatid arm is doing this, and then we've got the chromosome right next to it of the same type of chromosome doing this, and the other arm is doing, and I missed an arm or two here and there. I think you get the general idea. They're intermingling with each other. So if we look at a figure that depicts what's actually going on here, it would look like this. And so what we have here is initially chromosomes, just like we had up here, a red one and a blue one from the different parents within the same plant, however, they line up. So these would be both of the chromosomes number 1. Initially, they line up side by side, and then we start to see crossovers. And this is an example right here of a chiasma. I'll say chiasmata because there's also one down here as well. And then after chiasmata finish, this is what they potentially look like. And as you can see, now we've got some information that has been exchanged. And this is just why we use the red and the blue, so that you can see that information has been changed. So in other words, instead of, like we had before, the only possibilities of being this or this, now we have 4 different combinations. We've got solid blue, we've got blue with red here, and blue with red down here on this tip as well. Then we're going to have one that's solid red. Then we'll have a second one that's mostly red, but it has a bit of blue mixed in. And so this is the importance of chiasmata. Without chiasmata, we've only got two types of chromosome 1 potentially passed on to offspring. Here we have a minimum of at least 4 types. And when we count up the number of sperms and egg cells that are produced by these plants, particularly sperm cells, and we also spread out the chiasmata combinations over 4 or maybe even dozens of chromosomes, we end up with a lot of potential diversity in the offspring. And this is exactly why, if you come from a big family, even if you have lots of siblings like those people on television that have 19 or 20 or however many kids they have, although they may resemble each other strongly, no two of them are exactly identical, even though they've had the same parents over and over and over. Without chiasmata, all siblings from the same two parents would be identical. And so chiasmata is a valuable thing to not only plants but animals for ensuring that there is diversity in the general population, even if a lot of those population individuals came from the same parents.